welcome back to Knicks Deli. It is time for a deli run. Will the New York Knicks make a quick decision? It is time for Emmanuel Quickley to get paid. Will they pay him? We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the history of the New York Knicks signing their own players. We're going to talk about if $100 million is too rich. We're going to talk about what is the main reason why the New York Knicks should make this quick decision and give that man his bag. That'll be today here on Knicks Deli. Will the New York Knicks make a quick decision and give this man his bag? Everybody's talking and debating this on Twitter. Knicks fans are on opposite sides. You know what? That's too much. He wants to be a starter. That's too much for a backup. Don't get that man $100 million. Give him a little bit short. Other people are like, nah, he's worth it. That's what he wants. Get that man his bag. He's ours. He's homegrown. I'm here to talk about it today. But you got to remember this. You got to remember the time, like Michael Jackson. You got to remember the time when the New York Knicks was known for instability inside of their franchise. You got to remember the time. You got to remember the time when the players across the league did not trust what the New York Knicks were doing as an organization. They were speaking amongst themselves. You don't take care of your players. They don't have a culture. They don't have a vision in mind for where they want their organization to go. You got to remember when that was a discussion. You got to remember when the New York Knicks didn't draft talent. When every one of their draft picks, no matter how high or how low, didn't pan out, didn't re-sign with the team, ultimately would find themselves going off in a free agency, getting picked up by another teams, and sometimes finding success, which speaks to your lack of the ability to develop your own players. Remember that when he was talking about the New York Knicks can't develop players. When we're in a different time. When the decision comes, whether or not you should sign your players, you got to keep this in mind. What a difference does 5 years make? New York Knicks have now signed their center, stabilizing piece in their starting lineup. They signed Mitchell Robinson to a bag, showing him that we trust that you're going to be a piece of the core that's going to help us turn this thing around in the future. They recently signed R.J. Barrett, their number 3 pick, to a contract extension, letting him know that you too are part of what it is that we envision for the future. And now we are at the point we're considering whether or not we pay Emmanuel Quickley. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, you should be proud of that point. You should be proud of the point that we were able to draft players who were talented enough, who improved enough over time. We're at this point considering giving them their extensions. The third player, it was such a big deal when Mitchell Robinson got signed because for the longest time, the New York Knicks had not signed a player of their own since Charlie Ward. So Mitchell Robinson was the first domino to fall. R.J. Barrett was the second domino to fall. And we were getting close. We were getting close to Obi. And then the New York Knicks, obviously, Obi needed a different situation and they moved on from him. Now we're here with Emmanuel Quickley. And soon we're going to be there with Q Dot. Soon we're going to be there with Q Dot. But what this says to me is the New York Knicks have changed the perception. They've changed that profile of who they are. They are a team who has a vision for the franchise. They have a plan for the franchise. That's what they are. They are a team who has paid attention to what has worked in the league. And no matter what the fan outcry is, no matter what the media outcry is, or the murmuring in the streets, they're brave enough to stick to their plan. They've made adjustments in terms of how they interact with the media and what they afford time to in order to endure what comes with staying on course and sticking with your guns. That's what the New York Knicks have done. Doing so, they're super reminiscent to teams such as the Golden State Warriors, who drafted their players, developed their players, signed their players so that they have cohesion. Teams such as the Miami Heat, who've drafted players or signed players off of the trash heap, developed those players and attempted to re-sign them, but recently those players have gone on to get bigger contracts elsewhere. Or teams such as the Spurs, who historically have drafted players, successfully developed players, and then re-sign them or in DeJounte Murray's situation, sent him off to a situation where he could have a better opportunity to start and flourish, and he could be in a better position to get the number 1 pick. We saw what you did, Pop. We saw what you did. But that's where we are as the New York Knicks. You should be. I'm happy with the health of the organization, and I'm happy with this decision that we have to make when it comes to Emmanuel Quickley. Now the question becomes, what qualifies Emmanuel Quickley to get that type of contract? You got to ask yourself, in looking at Emmanuel Quickley and where he is today, what has he done? Well, he's done nothing short of getting better every year he's been in the league. He's done nothing short of getting better every year that he's been in the league. Last year, he made a run and he was in contention for 6th man of the year. 6th man of the year. Last year, we had injuries to our starting lineup. And he lost the 6th man of the year award because he performed so well as a starter. First off, that's blasphemous. That is hard for me to fathom. It is hard for me to understand. How do you penalize this young man who is a 6th man on his team? That is his defined role. But you penalized him because he did his job. He did his job. Once the starter is out, you come in and you perform. Well, the starter was out. It doesn't matter how long they were out or the reason they was out, but the starter was not in there. He was in there and he performed to a high level. And because of that, he was penalized for the 6th man of the year award. But to have the start to the season that he had, and we all knew that it was due to the trade, the near trade for Donovan Mitchell to come in and him to be shipped to Utah. That was the reason for it. Imagine the type of season Emmanuel Quickley would have had he come in to the season without that weight on his shoulders, knowing that the organization almost traded him off. These are young players. These are young players. And he was able to gather himself and then switch his mindset so that he could salvage his season in a phenomenal way. And that's what he did. He understood that this is now a business. Even though people talk about family all the time, at the end of the day, the NBA is a business. He self-corrected and he had a great season. And you got to consider that. The young man came in known as the long-range three-point shooter. Everybody was like, we got our own Steph Curry. And he moved from not only being, a three-point shooter and known for his floater, because all the stars in the league, from LeBron James to Damian Lillard to Lemon Pepper Lou, all of them was acknowledging his floater as one of the coldest in the game as a freshman, as a rookie. And everybody knew he had the three-point shot and he had the floater. What did this young man do? He worked hard to make sure he could get a mid-game. He worked hard on his handles to make sure he had the ability to drive. He worked on his body. This man stayed in the gym. And many of you will say, well, listen, that's his job. That's on his job description. And I understand that. But if that's on his job description, do you ever get bonuses on your job? Do you ever get rewarded for the work that you've done in comparison to your peers? This man was neck and neck finalist for 6th man of the year. How many people who came in with his class in that role was doing the same? So don't bring it to that's part of his job description if you ain't ready to comprehensively discuss that. And Emmanuel Quickley has done that successfully. Now the question becomes, if the New York Knicks do decide to sign him to that contract, will Emmanuel Quickley be accepting of the role that he has to play? How dedicated, how locked in, how focused is he on solely being a starter on an NBA team? Full time. That's where the question is. And the scary part about it is we're not hearing much from Emmanuel Quickley. Now, I don't know if that's a scary part or not. Because if we start hearing from Emmanuel Quickley, will the New York Knicks find themselves to be in the same situation as they were in with Obi? I can only imagine the conversations that Emmanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin had prior to Obi expressing what he's expressed. And he expressed what he expressed because he knew it was now or never to make this move. I need a year to show what it is that I can do in order for me to get a contract. And I'm not going to get that here playing in the New York Knicks organization. They're not going to pay me as long as they're dedicated to Julius Randle. And the New York Knicks are dedicated to Julius Randle. So I'm sure his team told him. I'm sure his management team told him, like, you got to shake it up. You got to shake it up. You got to hurt some feelings. And it's not going to be popular with the fans. And it may not be popular with your teammates. But you need to do what you need to do for your business. Now, will we be in the same situation with Immanuel Quickley? Because Immanuel Quickley is not taking the starting spot from Jalen Brunson. He's not. New York Knicks have already committed to Jalen Brunson as their starter. So how dedicated is Immanuel Quickley to wanting his own team, wanting to be a starter in this league, to show fully what he can do with all of the minutes that a starter gets? That is the question that the New York Knicks are going to have to answer. But I say this, there are some positives around it. And the positives are the New York Knicks starting point guard playing in the Olympics. That is a positive, because what you're seeing is Jalen Brunson playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton, the point guard who was identified as an all-star over him. And now he's starting over that point guard in the Olympics on a world stage representing the country, the highest honor you can get. You see how the NBA is self-correcting. You see how the NBA had to tell New York, oh no, we decide when you ascend. Because that's exactly what they did by overlooking JB. That's exactly what they did. All of those awards, all NBA, all-star game, they said, we're going to decide, New York, slow down, Knicks fans. We determine who, we are the kingmakers. We determine who's successful and who's going to get that shine from us. And we got a rollout plan. So hold your horses, because we want to capitalize on this financially when we decide to lift you up with the rest of the elites and allow you to be a king in this league. That's exactly what the NBA is doing. The NBA, just like their superstar, LeBron James, is so invested in controlling their narrative. They're so invested in it. But we had to do our part and get in the conversation. So you see, Jalen Brunson is the starter on Team USA. But I like what Kerr is doing. I like what Steve Kerr is doing. He's saying, you know what? JB is a natural leader. You can tell. And right now, he is the best player on Team USA. He is the best player on Team USA. But what Steve Kerr is doing is he says, I like both of them playing side by side. And that passing ability. So to have 2 point guards in the lineup with the vision that they have and the passing ability that they have, I like seeing that. Now, if you look at Tyrese Halliburton and you also look at his measurables, pause. And then you look at Quickley and you look at Quickley's measurables. Height-wise, they're about the same height. They're kind of langly, So like slim, they're herky-jerky in their movements. They got similar measurables. So ultimately, what Steve Kerr is doing in the Olympics or in FIBA is a favor to the New York Knicks. He's showing you what a 2-guard lineup with a guard that big at the 2 can look like. And even how he's playing them. And Tom Thibadeau is there watching games. He is studying. He is studying to see, bam, I see how that works. I can do that with Jalen in New York with Quickley. So it doesn't matter how you start. What matters is whether or not you close and other ways that we can keep you in the game if we find sets that are productive. So that is the positive. And if that is what's sold to Immanuel Quickley, then I could clearly see him selling for the $100 million and being given that role. All right. Manu Ginobili is a Hall of Famer and he wasn't a starter. So if that is the type of humility, but opportunity that Emmanuel Quickley is absolutely afforded, then I say go for it. But the most important thing is I trust the front office. I trust the front office to be able to have those conversations with their coach. I trust the front office to be able to kick the tires and see, because they may do a sign-in trade to ensure that Quickley gets that money, but to ensure that we bring back a player if we decide to move on from him. But also, I just trust the organization as a whole. You cats who are Tom Thibadeau haters, he ain't going nowhere. He ain't going nowhere. I was watching, YouTube, and I think some people had the argument, Steve Kerr is using JB correctly, in different ways. Steve Kerr right now has an all-star team. Every person and people will say Bobby Portis and everything. Bobby Portis is a championship player. Austin Reeves plays with LeBron James and AD. So they know their roles well, and obviously to be selected on that team, they do what it is that they do at their positions at a high level. That's what JB is working with. People who can consistently finish, people who are not necessarily developing, but their advanced development is already there. So then, you say, okay, why can't JB play the way that he's playing in FIBA in New York? He's going to get there. We are not far off. We were 2 games away from the Eastern Conference Finals. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? So that's all that I have. Will the New York Knicks make this quick decision? I recommend that they do. As long as Emmanuel Quickley is settled in the role that he's going to play, as long as the New York Knicks try to implement some of the sets that FIBA's doing when they play JB and Halliburton together, and as long as it's in the best interest of the team in terms of the cap, and we trust the cap god to help us make that decision. So what say you? Keep this in mind. Same thing applies to life. That applies to our team. If there's no struggle, there's no progress. Follow me on Knicks Daily. More videos are coming your way. KD community, I'm out. Knicks fans, let's go.